Hi. I'm here to rank Magneto's roles in the X-Men films. I think that Magneto could be my favorite Marvel villain. He's such an interesting character. He's had some really good stuff in the comics, uh, in the shows, and I think that he's fantastic in a lot of the films. And for the ranking, I'm focusing on how much I like Magneto's role in each of the films rather than the quality of each of the films overall. In eighth place is Dark Phoenix. I think that Magneto's role in Dark Phoenix is okay. It does feel too repetitive of the stuff in Apocalypse, though, where at first it seems like Magneto has calmed down, that he could be a somewhat decent person, but then he goes back to being an antagonist and he causes lots of problems and then he calms down again. And in Dark Phoenix, it felt like too much old stuff was being repeated for Magneto. His motivation as an antagonistic character that is doing something wrong, but comes from a sympathetic place. I guess it makes sense with him having a big soft spot for Mystique and stuff like that, but it still felt like he was being an emotionally closed off character that wasn't listening to reason, and by the point of Dark Phoenix, it felt like things were getting a bit old for his character. He does become more entertaining towards the end of the film and more likable, and I do really like his last scene in the film where he's talking to Professor X. So it's not a terrible role overall, but I do feel like it's the most underwhelming role that he got in the franchise. In seventh place is the Wolverine, and it could seem odd to have the Wolverine role above the Dark Phoenix role because his role in the Wolverine is very brief, but it is a really good scene where Ian McKellen comes back and he is great, and it really builds up to Days of Future Past really well. And I feel like his one scene in the Wolverine is cooler than anything that Magneto got to do in Dark Phoenix. In sixth place is Apocalypse, and I have very strong feelings about Magneto's role in Apocalypse. I'm very passionately mixed feelings about it because I think that Magneto's role in Apocalypse starts off great. The scenes where he's with his family are really interesting, where Magneto feels more likable than ever before. He's calmed down. He really loves his new family. He seems to actually care about the people that he's working with. He actually seems like he's become somewhat of a decent person, and things go really badly for him, and his reaction to losing his family is so tragic, and it's such a powerful moment, and he feels so lost after that. And then Apocalypse goes to him at a moment where he feels so confused about what to do, and it's so interesting. And then after that, Magneto is moving stuff around, not really being a super developed character, and mostly just focusing on his rage and being a villainous character. And it seems like things could be really interesting with him losing his family, but he could discover that he has a son and he could focus on something new, and it it feels like nothing comes from that, and Magneto deciding to stop doing the bad stuff and to stop helping Apocalypse out, that seems good, but after all the bad stuff he's done in Apocalypse, it feels like he's forgiven way too easily. I feel like after all of the problems he's caused, I feel like Professor X would really want to keep his eye out on Magneto. It feels like Magneto is treated like he's an okay person now and is let to go free, and I feel like that is very unearned. I feel like it's a very underwhelming conclusion to what started off as a great storyline for Magneto. So I have really mixed feelings about it, where I do think that his early scenes are fantastic and some of the most emotionally powerful scenes in the film, and then after that, things get underwhelming and feel like a real waste of potential. So some really complicated emotions about Apocalypse. In fifth place is Magneto's role in the first X Men film, and I do like his role in the film. It shows that he came from a tragic place, and I like his villain plan. I think that it's really interesting, and he doesn't feel like a full villain yet, where he still feels like he, to a certain degree, wants to achieve similar goals to Professor X, but his way of going about things are misguided and wrong. But he doesn't feel like a fully evil, like, doing evil stuff for no good reason sort of character. There's a lot of nuance to him. He's really interesting. He doesn't get too many scenes with Professor X, but the scenes that he does get are fantastic and really show why they're both such brilliant characters played by such fantastic actors. In my opinion, just great stuff for what he does get. In fourth place is Magneto's role in First Class, which does a great job of showing Magneto's complicated journey, where he comes from a tragic place. He has a lot of moments where it seems like he and Professor X could really get along, and there are a lot of moments where he doesn't feel like a full villain. There's a lot of points where he feels like an anti-hero rather than a villain, and seeing that explored is really interesting. I feel like the film explores why Professor X and Magneto could start off as friends, but why their ways of going about things are too different for things to work out in that timeline at that moment. And seeing that explored is really interesting, and I really like the complicated emotions and the character development that Magneto goes through. And it's sad to see him go down a bad path, but it's interesting to see him explored as a fully developed character rather than just a character that's like, doing evil stuff. I must stop the X-Men. He's a much more complicated character than that, which I really appreciate. In third place is Magneto's role in X2. I think that the fascinating dynamic of morality between Professor X, Magneto, and William Stryker is a lot of what carries X2, and there are a lot of other great things in it too. But I love that Professor X, he's the one that really wants people to get along. He's the really likable character. Magneto and Stryker are both very close minded people by that point, where Stryker looking after the humans, but Magneto, he is very much against the humans, and by that point, he's arguably as bad as Stryker is, and he has even more sympathetic motivations than Stryker, but the way he goes about things and how evil his ultimate plan is towards the end of the film, he's arguably as evil and as big of a problem as Stryker is, and it's fascinating to see two different layers of a villain and see Stryker and Magneto, who are both very evil characters with basically opposite plans, but basically the same level of morality. And I feel like that is fascinating, and it's so brilliantly done in the film. In second place is Magneto's role in X Men Days of Future Past, which I think really shows a lot of the best of Magneto. Shows some of his more sympathetic moments where he sort of wants to help out, but his way of going about things, his way of going after Mystique, is really actually getting in the way, and he actually causes a lot of the problems in the film. It gets to show Magneto being more heroic and helpful, showing the older Magneto finally patching things up with Professor X, actually being somewhat responsible. It gets to show Magneto doing a lot of evil stuff, doing some sympathetic stuff. Gets both Michael Fassbender and Ian McKellen in one film. It is so great. Um, and it was hard to choose between two and one. I guess a nitpick for me personally is Ian McKellen not getting that much to do in the film. I feel like he needed a few more moments to shine. What he does get is still great. In number one, and I feel like this could be a big hot take, is Magneto's role in X Men The Last Stand. I think that it has a lot of my favorite Magneto moments of all time. Ian McKellen arguably gives his best performance in the film, and he gets some of Magneto's best lines. I love Magneto lifting up the bridge, arguably the coolest action moment Magneto ever got. And seeing Magneto be a full on villain, seeing his journey in the films, where he started off from a somewhat sympathetic place, by this point, he's the big villain of X Men. He is so misguided in his values that Mystique performs a big sacrifice for him, and he acknowledges that, and then he abandons her. I feel like it shows how misguided he truly has become and how close minded his character has gotten to. And it felt like a real progression of his storyline as his morality digressed. And I feel like it was a great way to end the trilogy for Magneto's character. There's a lot of characters in X Men The Last Stand that I felt like could have been done a lot better, but when it comes to Magneto, it felt like him at his most villainous, and it felt earned, and it felt like it was Ian McKellen as Magneto at his very best. Great stuff. So that's my personal favorite, and I hope that's not too bad of a take.